When my dad screamed, "Get out and stay out," I honestly thought he just needed time to calm down. He had yelled before, thrown things before, slammed doors before. That was normal in our house. But this time felt different. His face was red, his hands shaking, and before I could even understand what was happening, he grabbed my design portfolio, the one I'd spent months building, and ripped it apart like it meant nothing. Pages scattered across the floor as he shouted that I was ungrateful dead weight, someone he regretted raising. I stood there frozen, watching years of my work being destroyed in seconds. I didn't yell back. I didn't defend myself. I just felt something inside me finally break. My name is Lennon Avery, I'm 24, and that was the moment I realized I couldn't survive another day under the same roof as Calder Avery. My father, a man who controlled everything from what I studied to where I worked, to who I could be. He wasn't always like that, or maybe he was and I had just learned to ignore it. After my mom passed away when I was 16, things got worse. He became harder, colder, angrier. Anything I did that didn't fit his plans set him off. My dream of becoming a designer? He hated it. My job interviews? He sabotaged them. My portfolio? Well, he tore that up right in front of me. So I picked up what little dignity I had left, grabbed one suitcase, just one, and walked out. I remember standing outside the house, the air freezing on my skin, realizing I had no plan, no money, nowhere to sleep. But even with that fear in my chest, I promised myself one thing. I would never crawl back. Not this time. Not again. That night, I slept in my car. I cried until my head hurt, thinking about how easily he threw me away. But I also felt something else growing inside me, something steady, something strong. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was both. And when the sun rose the next morning, my life changed in a way I never saw coming. I got a call from a lawyer representing someone I had never even heard of. Someone who claimed I was the sole heir to an estate I didn't even know existed. I didn't know it yet, but within 24 hours of being kicked out like trash, I would be standing in front of a $30 million Malibu mansion with keys in my hand. A mansion that would become my home. A mansion my father would soon learn about. And the same man who screamed at me to get out of his house would suddenly demand a place in mine. But by then, the door to my life had already closed on him forever. After leaving my father's house, I thought the worst part of my life was over. I believed the biggest pain came from him tearing up my portfolio and throwing me out like I was nothing. But I was wrong. The real betrayal came a few days later, and it cut even deeper. I had gone to the bank to check if I had anything left in the small account my mom opened for me when I was little. The teller typed for a moment, then asked me to wait. Her face changed in a way that made my stomach twist. She called a manager, and soon I was sitting in a small office while they explained something I couldn't understand at first. There was a trust fund. My mother had left it for me before she died. I had never been told about it. And it was gone. Every dollar. The manager explained that the trust had been worth over $2 million. Money my mother saved for my education, my future, my life. Money meant to protect me. Money meant to make sure I would never struggle the way she once did. But someone had cashed it out years ago. My hands shook as I asked who signed for it. The manager pulled up the records. When he turned the screen toward me, I felt the room tilt. There was my name, except it wasn't my handwriting. And next to it was my father's signature as the guardian. He forged my name. He took every cent. He didn't use it for me. He didn't save it. He didn't invest it. The bank records showed exactly where the money went, his failed business projects, his debts, his personal expenses. He spent all of it while telling me we couldn't afford basic things, while mocking my dreams, while acting like I was a burden. I felt sick. I couldn't breathe. I sat there trying not to break apart, but the moment I stepped outside, everything inside me gave way. I cried on the sidewalk like a child, not caring who saw. It felt like my mother had been taken from me twice, once by death, and once by the man she trusted to care for me. The hurt was so sharp I couldn't speak. I kept replaying every moment he called me useless. Every time he said I was a disappointment. Every time he acted like he was sacrificing so much to raise me, when in reality he had stolen everything my mother left behind for me. But after the crying stopped, something changed. I knew I couldn't stay broken. I knew I couldn't depend on anyone, not him, not his guilt, not his fake apologies. I had to protect myself now. So I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and decided I would no longer be the scared girl he pushed around. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to build a life without him. a life he would never touch again. And the first step was simple. I would make sure he never stole from me or hurt me ever again. I was sitting in my car outside a small cafe, trying to figure out what to do next when my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but something told me to pick it up. A calm voice introduced himself as Marlon DeVore, an attorney. I almost hung up because I didn't know any lawyers, and I definitely wasn't expecting a call from one. But before I could say anything, he said he was reaching out on behalf of a client named Elias Branton. I had never heard that name in my life. Marlon told me Elias Branton had recently passed away and left instructions for the law firm to contact me. He said I needed to come in as soon as possible because the matter was serious and time-sensitive. My heart raced a little, but mostly I felt confused. Why would a stranger's lawyer want to talk to me? I asked if he had the right person, and he repeated my full name, my birth date, even my mother's name. That made me pause. He said I had been listed as the sole beneficiary of Mr. Branton's estate. I almost laughed. Me? Someone who was sleeping in her car and didn't even have a working laptop anymore? I thought it had to be some kind of mistake or maybe a cruel joke. But the lawyer sounded too formal, too sure. When he mentioned the estate was large, I felt my breath catch. I asked what large meant, and he said we needed to speak in person. That alone scared me enough to agree to meet him the next morning. But before I could go, I needed a few documents, my ID, my birth certificate, and my mother's old papers. All of that was still at my father's house. Even though I didn't want to see him again, I had no choice. I drove back, hoping he wouldn't be home, but luck wasn't on my side. He opened the door with a cold stare, like I was a stranger he hated at first sight. I told him I only came to get my documents. He immediately demanded to know where I had been, who I was talking to, and why I looked too confident. When I mentioned I got a call from a lawyer and needed the papers, he burst out laughing. He said, "Stop making up stories. No one is leaving you anything. You're not that important." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I went to my old room and grabbed what I needed. But the entire time, he followed me around, saying I was lying, saying I wanted attention, saying I was trying to make him feel guilty for kicking me out. When I walked out with the folder in my hand, he told me not to come back unless I had something useful to say. I didn't even look at him. I just left. And as I drove away, I kept thinking about the strange call, the serious tone of the lawyer, and the name Elias Branton echoing in my head. I had no idea my life was about to change forever. When I walked into the law office the next morning, I felt small. The building was tall, shiny, and far too fancy for someone who had been living out of a car for days. Marlon DeVore greeted me with a warm handshake and led me into a quiet conference room. He handed me water, sat down, and looked at me as if he had been waiting a long time to talk. He started by asking what I knew about a man named Elias Branton. I told him the truth. I had never heard the name before yesterday. Marlon nodded, almost expecting that answer. And then he opened a brown folder filled with letters, photos, and documents. The first thing he showed me was a picture of my mother when she was young, standing beside an older man. She looked happy, her smile bright and real. The man next to her had a gentle expression, the kind you don't forget. "That's Elias," Marlon said softly. "He was your mother's guardian when she was a child. He cared for her like she was his own daughter." My chest tightened. I had never heard this story. My mother never talked about him, not once. Marlon explained that my mother and Elias stayed close until the day she died. After her passing, Elias kept checking up on me, quietly from a distance. He knew about my schooling, my health, even the struggles we faced. He never reached out because he didn't want to cause problems with my father, who had pushed him out years earlier. Then Marlon slid a letter toward me. The paper was old, the handwriting familiar. My mother had written it before she passed. In the letter, she begged Elias to look after me if anything ever happened. She wrote that she trusted no one else. She told him she feared I would not be cared for the way she wished. Reading her words made my hands shake. I felt her love in every line, and it hurt to know she saw what I never did at the time. Marlon explained that Elias took her final request seriously. He spent years growing his businesses, investing, and planning, and he chose me as his heir. Not because I was lucky, not because he felt sorry for me, but because my mother asked him to, and because he believed I deserved a chance at a life she never got to finish. Then came the part that left me speechless. He showed me a binder with property details. Elias had left me a Malibu mansion worth around $30 million. A place by the ocean, with wide windows, peaceful rooms, and land stretching out toward the waves. Along with that, he set up several trusts that would release over time, ensuring I would never struggle again. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, trying to breathe through the shock. It felt like the world had opened a door I didn't even know existed. For the first time in a long while, I felt safe. But I didn't tell my father. I couldn't. This was mine, my mother's last gift, Elias's promise, my new beginning. And I wasn't going to let him ruin it. The drive to Malibu felt unreal. The lawyer gave me the address and the gate code, but my hands were shaking the entire time. Watching the coastline appear beside me made my heart race. I kept telling myself this couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. Not after everything I had just gone through. Not after being tossed out of my father's house like I didn't matter. When I reached the mansion, the gates slowly opened, and I drove in with my mouth slightly open. The driveway was long and lined with tall palm trees. The house stood at the end, bright against the blue sky, with huge glass windows that looked out over the ocean. I stepped out of the car, and the sound of the waves hit me first, soft, steady, nothing like the yelling I grew up hearing every day. Inside, the house felt like a dream. The living room was open and filled with sunlight. The floors shined, the walls were smooth and clean, and everything smelled fresh, like the sea breeze had become part of the air. There were big white couches, artwork on the walls, and a huge window that made it look like the ocean was just an arm's reach away. I walked from room to room, touching the walls, running my hand over the furniture, almost scared everything might disappear if I blinked too long. I found the kitchen, bigger than any apartment I had ever lived in. I found the balcony, a wide wooden deck overlooking the water. Then I found the master bedroom. It had tall windows, soft curtains that flowed gently in the wind, and a calm silence that felt foreign but wonderful. Everywhere I stepped, I felt a strange mix of excitement and sadness. This house was peaceful, gentle, and full of light. It felt safe. Nothing like the home I left behind, where every sound meant tension, and every day felt like walking on broken glass. Standing in the silence made me realize just how much noise I had grown used to: anger, arguments, blame, pressure. It was all gone here. For a moment, I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself breathe. Really breathe. I didn't feel fear in my chest anymore. I didn't feel like someone was watching, judging, or waiting for me to fail. Instead, I felt something new and unfamiliar: freedom. I walked outside to the balcony and leaned on the railing. The ocean stretched so far it almost didn't look real. The waves moved gently, like they were welcoming me. The wind was soft, carrying the smell of salt and something that felt like hope. This place wasn't just a house. It was a second chance. A place where I could finally rebuild myself. A place where the words my mother wrote, the promise Elias kept, and the pain I survived all came together. I closed my eyes and made a quiet promise. I would start over. I would take care of myself. I would build a life that made my mother proud. And in this peaceful home by the sea, I would heal. I would grow. I would finally live. The peace I found in the mansion didn't last long. Word spreads fast, even when you try to keep your life quiet. I had told no one about the house, not even close friends, but someone must have seen me come through the gates or noticed the new name on the property records. A few days after I settled in, I heard loud banging on the front door. It wasn't just knocking, it was angry, violent pounding. I knew that sound. I knew that temper. When I opened the door just a small crack, my father was standing there, red-faced and shaking with rage. He didn't even say hello. He shoved his hand against the door and tried to force it open. "So it's true," he snapped. "You're living in some mansion now? Where did you get the money? Who gave this to you?" He looked at me like I had cheated him somehow, like I had done something wrong by having a better life. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me before he could push his way in. I told him he needed to leave, but he ignored me. He kept shouting that I owed him explanations, that I owed him respect, that he raised me, and that meant everything I had belonged to him. His voice echoed across the driveway, but this place didn't make me feel small. Not anymore. He kept demanding to see the inside of the mansion, insisting he deserved to know what I was hiding. I told him he wasn't stepping even 1 foot inside. The more I stood my ground, the angrier he became. His tone changed from yelling to guilt-tripping, like he wanted me to feel bad for moving on without him. "I fed you. I took care of you. You wouldn't be anything without me," he said, pointing a finger in my face. I didn't respond. I just held the door handle tightly, and kept repeating that he needed to leave the property. He didn't want to hear it. He kept shouting until he realized I wasn't letting him manipulate me anymore. Finally, he stormed off to his truck, yelling that this conversation wasn't over. After he left, my hands were shaking. Even in this safe place, he still had the power to make my body remember fear. But I stayed outside until my breathing calmed. I wasn't going to let him take this from me too. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I knew well, my sister Bryn. She and I never had a close bond because our father kept the house divided, always turning us against each other. But now her message held a different tone. She asked if we could talk privately. When I called her, Bryn sounded scared. She whispered that our father was furious that I had money he couldn't control. He had been talking nonstop about finding a way to get access to whatever I inherited. She said he was already asking people about legal options, claiming he had parental rights over anything I owned. Her voice cracked when she said, "He wants control of everything you have." Hearing that didn't surprise me. It just confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't angry because he cared. He was angry because he couldn't benefit. I thanked Bryn for warning me, and after the call ended, I sat in the quiet house, feeling my resolve harden. This home wasn't just my fresh start. It was my protection, and I wasn't going to let him take 1 inch of it. After Bryn warned me about what our father was planning, I knew staying quiet wasn't enough. I needed someone strong on my side, someone who knew the law better than he did. That's when I contacted Vera Montree, a respected attorney Marlon recommended. She was sharp, calm, and didn't waste time with fear. When I told her everything about the trust, the forged signature, and how the money had disappeared, her expression hardened. She said we had more than enough to take legal action. With my permission, she filed charges for the stolen trust. Seeing my name on legal documents, standing up for myself instead of hiding, made something inside me shift. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just reacting to what my father did. I was fighting back. Once the investigation started, it didn't take long for cracks to appear in Calder's company. Clients pulled back. Inspectors arrived. Workers whispered. My father had always bragged about being untouchable, about knowing exactly how to get around problems. But now every mistake, every shady deal, every corner he cut was finally being looked at. I didn't celebrate his trouble, but I felt a strange relief watching the truth come out. He had built his success on control and fear. Now it was slipping through his fingers. While that was happening, I made another quiet move. Calder had been talking for years about his next big development project, a massive one he claimed would change everything. He had already bought equipment and made loud promises. The only thing he needed was one last stretch of land. Without it, the whole project couldn't move forward. So I bought it. I didn't use my name. I didn't want him to know. I bought it through the estate manager Elias had set up, making sure everything was legal and clean. When the sale finalized, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about stopping him from using his power to hurt others the way he had hurt me. It was about taking control of something he assumed he owned. When he found out the land had been purchased by someone else, he lost his temper publicly. He yelled at city officials, blamed everyone but himself, and tried to find out who blocked his plan. He never imagined it was me, the daughter he always dismissed, the one he thought would never stand up to him. Sitting on my balcony that evening, watching the sun drop into the ocean, I felt something new settle inside me. Strength. Calm. Confidence. For the first time, I wasn't scared of him anymore. For the first time, my life truly belonged to me. I was leaving a small grocery store near the coast, holding a bag of fruit and bread when I saw him. My father stepped out from behind a parked truck, blocking my path. My stomach tightened, but I didn't turn back. I had been expecting something like this. With the investigation closing in on him, he wouldn't stay quiet for long. At first, his voice was soft, too soft. He reached out like he wanted to hug me, but I stepped away. He said he was worried, said he missed me, said everything was just a big misunderstanding. His face shifted between a fake smile and a shaky frown. I could tell he had planned every word. But when I didn't answer right away, his tone snapped like a rope pulled too tight. He leaned closer, his voice turning sharp. He told me I was ungrateful, that I didn't appreciate what he had done for me. Then he demanded I drop the charges and stop the investigation. He said I owed him that much. I stood still, gripping my grocery bag. My heart was beating fast, but I didn't let him see fear. I told him plainly that I knew everything about the trust, the stolen money, the forged papers. His eyes widened for a second, then he tried to deny it. When that didn't work, he switched back to begging. He said he was desperate and losing everything. For the first time, I didn't bend. I told him the truth. He did this to himself. Just then Bryn appeared. I hadn't even seen her walk up. She had tears in her eyes but stood right beside me. She told him she was done protecting him. She said she was going to testify because she couldn't watch him destroy me or anyone else any longer. The look on his face was pure shock. He had always counted on her silence. People in the parking lot began watching. My father noticed the eyes on him and tried to grab my arm, hissing that we needed to talk privately. When I pulled away, he lost control. His voice rose, echoing across the parked cars. He shouted that we were betraying him, that we were ruining his life. Then he snapped completely. He shoved a cart out of his way and stepped toward me with his hand raised, like he was going to hit me. That was the moment several bystanders intervened. Someone shouted. Someone else called 911. A man stepped between us, and my father exploded in anger, pushing him back. Police arrived quickly since the station was nearby. My father kept yelling even as they restrained him. His anger, his true self, everything he tried to hide, it all came out in front of everyone. When they finally put him in the back of the patrol car, Bryn slipped her hand into mine. She was trembling, but her voice was steady when she said, "It's over. You're safe now." And for the first time, I believed it. The day of the trial, I felt a mix of nerves and relief. The courthouse was crowded, full of people who had heard bits and pieces of the story. I sat in the front row, clutching my folder as Vera Montri, my attorney, organized the evidence. Every document, every bank record, every signature showing my father had stolen from me was laid out carefully. It was all there, proof of the forgery, embezzlement, and long-term financial abuse I had suffered. For years, he had pretended to care, but now the truth would be seen by everyone. When the judge called the court to order, Calder walked in, head held high, trying to look confident. I could see the tension behind his eyes, but I didn't let it shake me. I had prepared for this moment. I had survived him for years. I could survive a few hours in a courtroom. Vera called witnesses, presented bank statements, and explained how he had cashed out the trust left by my mother. Every lie he had told, every excuse he had made, fell apart under the weight of truth. It was painful to hear the details again, but it also felt like justice was finally starting to take shape. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, hands steady even though my heart raced. I read a statement I had written, every word carefully chosen. I told the court about the years I lived in fear, about being thrown out, about the trust that had been stolen from me. I spoke about the hope my mother had left me, the second chance Elias Branton had given me, and how I had worked hard to rebuild my life despite everything. I told them I was no longer a scared girl. I was free, and I deserved that freedom. Calder tried to interrupt, tried to twist my words, but the judge would not allow it. I continued until every word was said, and when I finished, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my life and proving that no one, not even your own father, could destroy you if you refused to let them. The jury deliberated, and after what felt like hours, the verdict came in. Calder was convicted. The judge sentenced him to prison for embezzlement and forgery. I saw the shock on his face, the anger, the disbelief. After years of controlling me, of trying to hold power over my life, it was over. He would pay the price for his actions. Bryn also appeared in court, admitting her part in keeping him from my discovery. Because of her cooperation and willingness to testify against him, the judge granted her leniency. She would not face the same punishment, and she looked at me with relief and gratitude. I knew it had taken courage for her to do the right thing. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. The past was finally behind me, and my future was truly mine to build. The chains of fear and betrayal had been broken, and I could finally move forward with strength and peace. The house felt different now. Everything was quiet and calm, and I decided to host a small gathering with close friends and people who had supported me through everything. It wasn't to show off the mansion or prove anything to anyone. It was to honor my mother, the woman who had believed in me even when my father didn't. We shared stories about her, laughed, and sometimes cried, remembering the love she had left behind. For the first time in years, I felt at peace in my own home. After the gathering, I thought about the young women I had met over the past year, girls and women trapped in abusive homes, feeling like they had no way out. I knew what it was like to feel powerless and abandoned, and I wanted to help. Using part of my inheritance, I set up scholarships and support funds for those escaping toxic families. I wanted them to have a chance at a life where they could be safe, free, and strong. Every application that came in reminded me of my own journey, and I felt like I was turning my pain into purpose. One afternoon, a letter arrived. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. He begged for forgiveness, writing about how he had been wrong, how he missed me, and how he wanted another chance. I read it once, slowly, feeling a mixture of anger and pity. I could almost hear his voice demanding control, twisting the truth, trying to make me feel guilty again. But I knew he hadn't changed. The letter didn't deserve a second read. I took it outside and set it on fire, watching the flames swallow every word. It felt good to let it go completely, to close that chapter without leaving room for him to return. Sitting on the balcony later, looking at the ocean stretch out in front of me, I thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the betrayal, the fight for justice. Leaving my father had felt terrifying at first, like stepping into the unknown. But it wasn't a downfall. It was the start of my life. Every step I had taken, every decision to stand up for myself, led me here, safe, strong, and free. For the first time, I felt completely in control of my life. Leaving my father didn't end my story, it began it. And this time it was mine to write.